This recording was made as a part of the oral history project by St. Joseph's College Honors Program students in their fall 2017 semester. It was recorded on Wednesday, November 29th, 2017 at 1 p.m. in the admissions conference room located in Burns Hall, Brooklyn, New York. The interviewers are Victoria Brucas, Constana Gracia, and Sashoy Milton. The narrator is Dr. Carol Hayes. So, the college has undergone many changes over the last 50 years. What, in your opinion, has been the best yet?
I couldn't pick one, actually. There were many things that happened over the last 50 years. One, I think, that was significant was Sister George Acklin became president of the institution. And she became president at a time when many colleges were failing. Many colleges of our size were failing. And without any kind of overtures to the faculty or students or anything, she knew that we were in a bad situation at that time. And so she had the smarts to keep us going when everybody else was closing down. So that was one thing. That was a significant change. I think, and you know, I think that changes in colleges are very trendy. It's what's happening right now that creates the character of the college, so the character changes over time, and it changes with different groups of students. So during the 70s, I don't know if you're aware, there was a war that everybody was not in agreement about, including the students. Not just St. Joseph's College students, but students in every college. And it was the Vietnam War. And so that was a very active time in college when students were protesting and they were very active, and it was a lot of fun to be with them because they were interested in what was going on outside of themselves. So it was another time when significant change took place in the college, among the student body mainly. But faculty joined into those protests also at that time. Kind of fun. And then near and dear to my heart was the rebuilding of the laboratories in the biology department and the chemistry department when Sister Elizabeth became president in the late 90s. And so having been here teaching for a long time, and we had very old laboratories. That didn't mean that a lot of things didn't go on in the laboratories, it did. But they were old and dated. And the impetus for that was, and I don't know if you know this, there was a group who wanted to come into the college and film some stuff for television or whatever, I don't know what it was. And Sister Elizabeth, who was then president, took them on a tour. And so, of course, she brought them to the biology department. We're kind of separate down there. And they remarked to her that the laboratories were so nice, they were so quaint. And Sister Elizabeth hinged right on that word, quaint. And she called myself and Sister Mary Meyer. Sister Mary Meyer was the chairperson of the chemistry department then, and I was the chairperson of biology. And she called us to her office. And she was so incensed at that word, quaint, that she said, we can't have quaint science laboratories. And so that began what she called a renovation of the laboratories, but it wasn't just a renovation, it was really a rebuilding. Our whole department was gutted right down to the beams, and everything was rebuilt. Got new microscopes, got everything brand new. And so this was a big thing for our department. And for chemistry also, because chemistry majors take biology classes people take chemistry classes. And the chemistry labs were done over at the same time. They were all computerized, everything. We came into the modern era. So I think that was a big change also. And I'm sure that there are other changes. I looked at this and I said, what kind of changes took place? But you know, change occurs and then it goes on by and you forget about it. But what I see as change in probably any institution but I'm only familiar with St. Joseph's, is things happening, it's the general society right now, and whether or not the students react to that, because it's really the students that create change. It's not faculty, it's not administration that creates change, it's students that create change. So I can't think of anything else. I think those were three highlights really throughout my career here that occurred, that were, for me, kind of watermarks that big changes took place.
The 2015-2016 report stated that 78% of the student body received some sort of financial aid. What was the atmosphere at the college like when the then Governor Nelson Rockefeller announced the initiation of financial aid to private colleges in 1966?
That was a very interesting time because in order to get this public aid, we could no longer really be a Catholic college. And so there were many people, faculty and students alike, who were very opposed to taking aid from New York State. Some colleges didn't do it. But given the financial condition of a small college like us, and we only had this campus at that time, we didn't have Patchogue, Sister George felt that it was the right thing to do. And so there was a little bit of dissent at that time among certain faculty. Some faculty left because they felt that this was not the right thing to do. You as students need to know that that's not the right thing to do. When change is taking place, if you don't agree with it, you need to not run away, but do something about it. And so those faculty went out the door, and that was the end of their contribution. The rest of us stuck it out. Whatever way you felt about it really didn't make any difference, but I think most people realized that we needed to have that money. And it wasn't for the faculty, it wasn't for the administration, it was for the students that we needed that money so that we could continue to educate students. And so that was the general feeling around that time. Some people liked it, some people didn't. We basically gave up our Catholic identity. Today we call ourselves a college in the Catholic tradition, and that's true. But we offer courses in many different religions now. Prior to that time, it was only Catholic theology that was taught at the college. But following these changes, the reception of money, all the statues, there used to be statues around, pictures of, icons around, they all had to disappear. So there used to be a crucifix, for example, in every classroom. They had to come down because you really couldn't present one religion, one religious face, because you were taking public money. And so a lot of changes took place at that time, but I think in general we came out of it better than we had been before. So lots of times changes are taking place, people get angry, they get mad, you can't really listen to them. You have to really think in your own head what you think is the right thing to do. And so, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
How aware of the school's financial troubles before and surrounding going co-ed were the students and staff, and how did that affect the mood on campus?
Frankly, we didn't really know about it. Sister George Acklin kept that all under wraps. And we really didn't find out about it until Sister George was getting ready to retire. And then she started to narrate the situation that she faced when she became president. It was a school, really, that was failing. We didn't have any money. And it was her job to bring all of this back and make us thrive again, and she did that. And none of us knew what serious problems the college had at that time. So when she was getting ready to retire and she started telling us these stories, we were really amazed. We did remember, of course, that there were lots and lots of colleges of our size that were closing down at that time. But I don't think any of us ever related it to ourselves. We figured we were thriving, and that was the picture that was presented to the faculty and the students. So it would have been a big surprise to all of us, faculty and students alike, if the college had closed down, because we just figured we were not like those other colleges. We were different. And nobody really thought about it, because the business of a college is education. And so on a daily basis, that's what you are doing, and that's your focus, is education. So you don't really think about the financial interests of the college. That's left up to somebody else who's supposed to do that. That's their job. And so being specialists, we kind of stick in our own fields, in our own offices, with our own students, and we do our work. And so we never knew anything about it. And I have to say, at that time too, maybe there was some rumblings, but I was involved in my own education, so I spent a lot of time out of here. I taught, but then I was going off to graduate school in the afternoon and evening, and on the weekends I'd be spending all my time there doing my research. So I might have missed some of it, but just talking with my colleagues, I don't remember any of us ever really thinking about that. This was just normal, everyday stuff. We were doing our jobs, and that's the way it was. You just minded your own business. What was administrative was administrative. What was faculty was faculty. When the two start mixing together, that becomes a disaster.
You speak a lot about Sister George. Do you think the role of women in the college changed when the men were added in the 70s?
Well, no, the role of women didn't change, because we still had all women in administration at that time. But it was a good thing, because, and I believe this in every walk of life and in every institution, there should be males and females, because we think differently. And we have a lot to offer each other. And so when any institution is all male or all female, that's not a good thing, because you have only one-sided thinking. And I think this is a problem that we approach today in many institutions, that we refer to the old boys club or whatever, where you just have men making decisions. And oftentimes their decisions are not good, because they don't have input from the other side. The rest of us think differently. And if we could all, just as human beings, accept one another and respect one another, then we'd have a much better situation in every institution on this face of this earth. When that will happen, I don't know. But the admission of men was a good thing in the classroom. They brought a richness of thought that we hadn't had before. So you had men and women arguing the same points, and they saw those points from different perspectives. And so everybody was better educated then. One gender education is not a good idea.
So we've been talking a lot about changes, but if you had the power to change one thing on the school, what would it be?
I would love to have 1,000 students in the biology department, all of whom studied every single day and were interested really in what they were doing. That's what I would like to see change. I would like to see students become more committed to their education. Now, I understand, they have, and this is not a reflection on any of you, or any single student in the college. It's a general point of view. That students don't see the forest for the trees. And so they come to college and they say, I want to major in this. Okay, that's a good idea. Now what do you want to do with the rest of your life? Because today is the first day of the rest of your life. And if you let today slip by, then you missed a lot. And so I would like, if I could change anything in this college, to go out and recruit a whole bunch of students, as many as I possibly could, who are absolutely committed to their education and not you know, I understand that outside activities are important, and I tell my students, when during a semester, the most important thing that you do is learn. And I know you want to play, because I wanted to play too when I was a student, all right? But you can't do that until intercession or the beginning of May after finals. Now you have 3 months to play. In December and January, I have about a month to play. Play as hard as you work. So when you come back to school, you're ready to really dig your teeth in and do the hard work again, and not forget that every day. And then when you get the opportunity to play that hard too, because that's what keeps you well-rounded. But you're better learners that way also. So I think that today, you know, and I look back over all the years I've been here, I think today's students are so tethered to their cell phones that they are being controlled by everyone else in their environment, and they never have an opportunity to sit and talk to themselves and find out who are they and come out you know, somebody's always calling them, and they're always giving their attention to something else, and they're never giving their attention, their undivided attention, to themselves. Now some people will say, well, that's selfish. No, it isn't, because you're at a time in your life now where you are learning, and that's the most important thing you do. That's your career right now, and that determines how well you will be able to contribute to society when you graduate. So each lost day, or each lost hour, or lost 5 minutes on a cell phone militates against your becoming all you can be. So in my classrooms, or you probably, I don't know if you know this, I have a general reputation. But I tell the students, I don't want to see a cell phone. Don't let it ring in here, because it will distract me. And you are not to do anything except pay attention to me and ask questions. So they don't have cell phones in my room, but I know in a lot of classes they do, okay? And every once in a while students sneak out a phone. They think you don't see that. You're standing in front of the classroom. I think every student should have to stand in front of the classroom for a while and teach, because then they find out that you see everybody that's sitting there. All right? They think they're hiding. They're hiding. You see everything that everybody does. So I don't remember the question now. I remember
The question was your one change to the
my
school.
one change.
Yeah.
1,000 students who are really interested in their studies.
Mhm.
That's what I would change.
So you touched a little bit on this when you talked about like the war and how that affected people on campus, and naturally you can't really escape the influence of the outside world. So what event do you think had the biggest impact on SJC?
I think the event that has the biggest impact varies with the time. Okay? So in the Vietnam era, when we were all fighting a war in Vietnam that many people did not agree with, felt that they shouldn't be there, that's what's very important. The changing of the guard, each time you have a change of administration, that's another big event in a college that influences not just the administration, but also the faculty and the students who are a part of the college. We had a great recession back in the 80s. That was a big deal because a lot of students then found themselves without money to pay tuition and was scrambling for what to do. So I think there's no one thing that I could put my finger on and say, that's it. That really changed everything, because we're always changing. Every single day we're changing. And what the reaction is in the college is really, like I said before, mainly due to how the students respond to what's going on. They drive any kind of change or interest in the college. They don't think they do, but they do. They think the faculty do that. The faculty don't do that at all, okay? The faculty are pushed up, and this is what the students are doing right now. So you have to be cognizant of how the students are reacting, and those reactions are different all the time. They're different. So, you know, the political landscape changes, students have reactions to that. Worldwide, the global changes that are taking place, students have reaction to that. So there's no one single change, I could say, that took place that really was defining. Each change or each thing defined itself in that particular time. And how you respond to it is the important thing. So in the Vietnam era, if faculty stood back and told the students they were all wrong for going out and demonstrating, and you know, they really had some really wicked demonstrations in those days, where people were beaten up and arrested, and if the faculty stood back and said you're wrong to do that, they would have been wrong. So I think that you know, you can't pick any one thing and say that's a defining moment. We've had lots of defining moments. Lots of changes took place that altered the institution at that time, and also probably forever, but you'd really have to sit back. I looked at that question, and I thought, what would I say to that? And I thought, there really isn't any single thing that I could say that was a defining moment. I don't think there was. Sometimes you ask, you know, would you go back to particular times? I always think that's a bad question, because if you go back, you have to take all the bad with the good. So sometimes people will say, you know, I wish I could go back 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or whatever. And then when you start thinking about everything that happened in the meanwhile, see, what you really tend to remember is the good stuff. But as you get away, if you start thinking back, it wasn't all good. And the thing is, you have to say, would I go back there? I call that a defining moment. Do I want to go back there and do that? I don't think so, because then I have to, all of these other things happen that I didn't like so much. So, no defining, as far as I know, no defining thing occurred that changed this institution entirely. Nothing. We are in constant change. Every day of our lives here, we're in change. So, and that change is basically driven by students, although they don't think that they change things. They do. They're the ones that change it. So each new group that comes into St. Joseph's College comes in with new ideas, new likes, new dislikes, new problems, old problems, and so we change all the time. If we didn't change all the time, we would be dead. Finished.
You were a member of the student newspaper Topaz while you were a student at St. Joseph College for Women. Our current newspaper, The Spirit, is not as active. Do you have any recommendation on how to get students interested in what happens on campus and off campus?
I always think that I have an answer to that, but I don't, because I try to get students involved, and then they don't get involved. I think, how long are you here? All three of you?
We're sophomores.
You're sophomores this year, okay. A few years ago, the athletic director was dismissed. And he had done a lot. He'd gotten money for the Hill Center. You know, there were different opinions of this fellow. The students really admired him, and they were dismayed. And And I would say they developed a rather fury over the fact that he was dismissed. And so did some faculty, who brought all of this to the attention of the then president of the college. And I would say that was the most active that I have seen students in years at the college. They were really concerned about what happened. They were willing to go the long mile to see if they couldn't change what had happened. And I admired them. As a matter of fact, some of them came to visit me in my office, and I encouraged them, go, yeah, keep going. So how do you get students involved? They have to get away from their cell phones. And they have to look at themselves as individuals. And they have to have the courage to express what they're thinking. Whether or not somebody else is going to agree with it is immaterial. But I think too many students today are concerned about how others may feel about what they have to say. And so they don't offer opinions. And they should, because that's how we all grow. We don't all like to hear one another's opinions. But if we're educated people, then we are willing to accept other people's opinions and be changed by their opinions. But I think students today are kind of loath to do that. They've for too long been told what to do and how to do it. And so they're not so independent as they have been in the past. I think we have to encourage independence among students, that they don't have to be led every place that they're going. They can put their foot out and step out on their own, because ultimately that's what they're going to have to do. And what better place to learn it but than here? I think students, the center of the universe today is not so much the institution that they're involved with as it was really in my day when I was here as a student. This was home to us. We had another home with your parents, but at this point in life, you were looking to be independent of your parents, all right? You can't be a baby bird in a nest forever. You have to get out on your own. And so here, this was the place. And we had a lot of faculty who encouraged us to be individuals. And so I think we have to encourage students to be individuals, to be who they are, to see themselves as developing individuals now, rather than, I don't want this to sound bad, I don't mean it that way. But it's difficult today for students to grow up beyond high school. And in high school, they have been regimented. And this is what they do, okay? And this is what you do today, and this is what you do tomorrow, and this is what you do the next day. And when they come to college, it's very difficult for them to shake loose of that. That was not the same in past years. So it's not the fault of the students. It's the system. The system has to change so that they understand that they are growing human beings and they are going to be the leaders of society. And this is the place they're learning how to do this. This is the place they're escaping from whatever tethers they have, that now they're free and they can do what they want to and they can express opinions. So I think students don't hang out at the college like they used to. We used to be here all day and all night. And when we weren't here, we would be in my day, in coffee houses in Greenwich Village listening to poetry readings or folk songs or whatever. But most of the time was here, and all of your friends were here, and because you wanted to be with your friends, you did what they did. So if somebody was working on the paper, thought, well, that's a good idea, I'll go and work on the paper too. But they were freer at that time to express themselves, or they felt freer. Whether they were or not, I don't know. I don't think we looked at people kind of holding on to us. We saw ourselves as free individuals, and so I don't know how to do that with students today. I wish I did, because if I knew how to do that, I would do that. I would do that in my classes. I would do that in extracurric. And I think, you see, years ago, you went out in grade school and high school, you went in the street and played with your friends. Today, nobody does that. They go home and they stay in their house. And they sit in front of their computer. Or they play with their cell phone. Or they play computer games. And so they're not as social as they were back in the day, as they say. All right? It's not the good old days, okay? But back in the day. Today's students are less social because they don't do those kind of things. And they've been regimented all along. Okay, you'll belong to this activity and I'll drive you here, to this activity, and then I'll drive you there, to that activity, I'll drive you there. And the student never gets an opportunity to be inventive on their own. They never get an opportunity to know who they are. They're always a member of a group. And it's good to be a member of a group, but in the group, if you're not an individual, you're not going to contribute much. And so I think this is part of it, that unless somebody takes them there and say, here, you'll do this now, they don't do it. And I think that's really, really unfortunate. How do you get by that? I don't know. You have to get by years of regimentation, which is what's happening today. And I think it happens more and more all the time. You see parents who, their kids are in 45 activities outside of school. And the parents have run ragged, taking them from this activity to that activity, some other activity. Academics become much less important. And it's, what game can I play? With whom? And I never really have to shine how many people become stars. Not many, but everybody contributes. So I think it's because they're always taken to do these things. And when they get into college, they're not themselves. They don't, I don't know how to put this. They just don't join in because nobody is taking them there and saying, join into this. So I think we could get by it. But I think, and all of these clubs and the paper and everything, they used to have moderators, faculty moderators. And I think the faculty moderators oftentimes kind of drove what happened. So, they would say to a student, why don't you come and join? You'd be good in this. And the student would go and try it out. I don't think that's happening anymore. I don't know if we have moderators anymore, do we? We used to have a moderator for the paper.
We do.
Okay, so how come people don't respond to the moderator?
They aren't always present at all the meetings. They're just like a figurehead.
Yeah.
Oh, the moderators, okay. That's unfortunate. Because the moderator really should be there. That's a part of that person's job. Whoever is doing it. If you volunteer to do this, then you really need to be faithful to that. You have to honor your commitment. And so but I think we all do that. I think people are less energetic than they used to be. I don't know. And people don't realize what influence they have on others. If they did, I think they would put more into what they're doing. But how much do the students come? So if the moderator comes, are the students there?
Yeah.
They are. Okay, so the students are pretty faithful to what they've committed themselves to doing. And if you don't have a moderator that's committed, that's a problem. But you see, I think you should bring that to the attention of Sherry Van Arnhem. Say, hey, we really want to have an active newspaper. And I remember for a few years it was active. we used to get the newspaper all the time, and I used to enjoy reading it to see what the students had to say about this or that, or what else they would, and students had different interests, so they wrote different columns. I thought that was good, but if the moderator's not being faithful to his or her commitment, I think you should talk to Sherry Van Arnhem and say, hey, you know, we really do want to have a paper. We want it to be a good paper because we're members of this and we want to make it good, but if the moderator never comes, how are we going to do that? Because we need direction as to how to make a good paper, because you're learning that.
As a student, you're a member of the science club.
Yes.
In your 50 years here, what's the best accomplishment you've seen?
I mean, actually, today I don't pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the science club because I've never been, well, in my very early days when I first came back to teach here, I was a student here, you know. When I first came back, they made me moderator of the science club. And we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of interesting things. We had speakers come in and all that kind of stuff. So I think one of the major things that the science club does that I think is a really good thing is that they do have speakers in. Sometimes the speakers are alumni who come in to talk about their careers to the students, so the students can get an idea of you know, what's open for them. And I think they do the blood drive along with another club. I don't think they do it by themselves, but they do it along with another club, and I think that's a very good thing for them to do. But I think it should be more driven toward, it's what we used to call a study club, all right? Unlike some other clubs, which are really more social, this was a study club. Science club was associated with the department, and the major purpose of the club was that you would do some more advanced stuff. You're learning things in the classroom. What can I do with this? But I think study clubs are gone by the boards, and if the students say, you've got to be kidding me, if I'm going to class and I'm going to go to a study club. Right? At least you admit it. I think that's wonderful that you say yes.
That's interesting because I was talking to Lauren about making a 3D model of the DNA with the 3D printer they had in the library. But like, you know.
You could get, I mean, are you a member of the science club?
I am.
What are you majoring in?
Bio.
Oh, haven't had you in class yet. You're a sophomore. Okay. I think that would be a wonderful thing if there was a group of students in the science club to get together to work on that. And everybody would be learning not just about DNA, but also about how to make a computer model like that. We all talk about that and we will read about it. And maybe even some of the faculty would like to participate in that thing. Not that they know anything about making 3D models using a computer, but they can learn also. All right, that's a lifelong thing that you do. And you learn more from your students than you ever learned in a classroom. So I think that would be a great thing for you to do. So why do you think you can't get this off? Nobody's interested?
I only found one person, one classmate.
Tasmin is the only one who's interested?
No, you didn't ask Tasmin, asked my classmate Olivia. She's in my year as well.
Oh, okay. So did it come up at a science club meeting? How often does the club meet now?
Virtual.
Rarely. See, this is another problem. Who's the president this year?
Tasmin.
Tasmin. So get after her and say, we have to have a meeting, and this is a thing that I want to present at a club meeting. See if anybody's interested. But then, if you're the prime mover, you have to be after everybody else to keep doing it. So you become the leader, all right? People don't like to be leaders. But if you have a good idea, you think it's a good idea, and you get a core of students who are interested in doing that, then you be the leader. It doesn't have to be Tasneem. Tasneem is the president of the club, all right? But you can have this subgroup in the club like you do in any club, and I think that would be a great idea because the students would learn a lot from that. Not just about DNA. Dr. Delaney would be over the moon, crazy, to hear that you would like to do something like that. And as a matter of fact, you could probably get her to participate in that. You're gonna have her next semester, right? Yes. For genetics. So maybe the members of the class, your class, who may be interested in this might get a project like that started in genetics. Talk to Dr. Delaney about it. She loves those kind of things. She really does. Anything new, she loves to participate in that. So and she likes to do research, and she likes to see the students active in doing things. So I would mention it to Tasneem because there might be other people in the club who are interested also. But I think when you have a meeting, you say to Tasneem, call a meeting because this has been suggested. This is something I'm interested in. I want to know if there are any other people in the club who are interested in doing this too, along with me. I only have one other person who's interested. We need more than that. But you be a prime mover. Okay? Don't wait for somebody else to do it. You do it. Don't stand in the background and be quiet, because then you never offer what you have to offer. And everybody has a lot to offer. I have Tasneem in class right now. I promise I will not say anything about it. I'll let you do that. But I mean, this has been a hallmark, really, of St. Joseph's College for a long time, that students can become prime movers here. And they can get a ball rolling. They have to be committed. Now, one problem with remaining committed is if you surround yourself by people who are not committed, then they kind of drain all the commitment out of you and you have nothing left, all right? But if you can get a core of students who are interested like you are in doing that, then you be the leader. You set up the times when you're going to do this. You have to, of course, talk to the group and find out what's the best time. And students will fall away, all right? Just like in any walk of life, people will commit themselves and then they kind of, drift away. But there will be a core who stay together with you. And you are the prime mover. You're the one who is making all of these other people learn something new. That's important. That's how you become a leader. This is the time in your life when you become a leader. You don't become a leader when you get to be 50. You become a leader early on. You develop those characteristics. And then when you graduate, you have all of that to offer to whatever walk of life you wind up in, whatever career you wind up in. But it starts here. It doesn't start, see, I say that to students lots of times. There's no magic in walking across the stage at graduation and being handed a diploma. There's no magic in that. And tomorrow is going to be the same as today. So you get the diploma, that's tomorrow. And this is today. You'll be the same person. And unfortunately, by the time you've gotten to that age, you're probably not going to change much. So if you want to be a leader, start now. And if you're interested in that, and you have somebody to help you out with that, get a core of students together. And it might be, maybe it's not through the science club. Maybe it will be through Dr. Delaney's class in the spring. Is she your advisor?
She's Dr. Delaney? No, Dr. Perez.
Dr. Perez, okay. Dr. Perez is an ecologist.
Yes.
So she may not be so interested in making a 3D model of DNA. She might want to make a 3D model of some biome somewhere, okay, which is okay too. But Dr. Delaney would really be the one to talk to, and she gets very excited over things, and she will help you out. So, are you a bio major?
Yeah.
You are? You're a bio major too? The outsider. Okay, so they have two now who can be committed to this. And how many students are in your class?
12.
12? So out of 12, how many do they need to start a project like this?
1 or 2, 3.
Okay, but you could probably get more than 2. And you'll be beginning to develop your leadership qualities. And doing that, it's good for you. So when you graduate, we'd be proud of you. And we have lots of graduates from the biology department about whom we're very proud, who have done big, big things in their lives. But it begins here. It doesn't begin after you get your diploma. I don't know if I answered your question. I gave you more problems than you expected to have, right?
No.
Now when I see you around, I'm going to say, talk to Dr. Delaney yet? Don't talk to her at this time of the semester. This is a very frenetic time of the semester when everybody's trying to finish up and everybody just wants to get away from everybody else. You know, like you do too, all right? You have too much people around you. And so you need to get away and get refreshed. And so don't talk to her right now. Wait a little. Or wait till the new semester and then talk to her. Because then she'll be recommitted and excited about the new semester and her new class. And we all complain about how our students don't seem to rise to challenges. So she would be over the moon happy if she had people in her class who are interested in doing something like this. Really. I'm suggesting, I mean, you know, if you want to go through the science club, you can do that, but I think this could be a class thing too. Especially when you have a group of people who are all studying this same thing. And this is important, and you will learn so much from doing it.
That's true.
So I expect big things now. I say, I won't teach you until next year. You escape for another year.
So, while I may not be a bio major, I am secondary.
That's
ed,
right.
so-
We're very open-minded.
Yeah. So, so I am secondary ed, so I am interested about this question. You know, it's obvious from the way that you frame your questions, frame your answers rather, and your perspective on things that you're a teacher or you're an educator. So, what motivated you to become a teacher?
I never wanted to be a teacher. When I was an undergraduate, it was suggested to me that perhaps I might do that one day by the then chair of the biology department. And I said, I will never, ever teach, not ever in my entire life. I'm going to do research. So when I graduated, I had a couple of fellowships, which I gave up because I wanted to see what I could do with what I knew. And I felt that spending more time in school at that time was not going to help that. So I got a job doing research. And my first job in research, I really, really liked it. It was in a hospital. The principal investigator was a pathologist who was studying atherosclerosis. And so we were doing a lot of work with a lot of different kinds of animals, studying the development of atherosclerosis, creating conditions in which it would develop. And I really enjoyed it. And then I left that job and I went to work in Cornell at the medical school downtown here. And that job was in immunology. And although I loved the work that I was doing, I found it really stifling because in those days in research, if you had a faculty position, you were expected to bring in money, grant money, more than equal to whatever salary you're being paid. So you'd be paying your electricity and the rent for the rooms you occupied, and it was a very difficult thing for those principal investigators who had that pressure on them. But in order to get grant money, you had to have something unique that you were doing. And so that led to a very insular kind of existence. You didn't talk to anybody else. Because if you did, they would ask you what was going on in your laboratory, and if you told them, they might think, wow, that's a good idea, and they apply for a grant, and now you don't get the grant. So was so turned off by that. Although I liked the job and I enjoyed what I was doing, but at that time, the chairperson of the department, who was the chair when I was an undergraduate, called me up one evening and she said, one of my faculty is leaving. Would you be interested in trying out college teaching? And so I said, I need to think about it a little bit. So I thought about it, and because I was disgruntled about what the situation was in research, I thought, well, I don't have anything to lose. You know, I could have 100 jobs at that time, and I wouldn't be considered to be unstable. If you keep going from job to job to job, when you get older, then you look like you're unstable. But when you're a kid, that's not instability. That's trying out things. So I came back to the college to teach, and the rest is history. I never left. And I'm not unhappy about it at all. I've enjoyed every single day of teaching students. I don't consider myself a teacher. There's a difference between a teacher and a professor. A professor doesn't care how you learn or how you study. All the professor is concerned about is telling you about their field, because that's what that person really, really is enamored of. And that person wants to excite other students so that they will get the same kind of love of their field as the professor has. So I think teachers have a larger job than professors. They have to be concerned about whether or not the students are studying. Professors basically don't care. Okay? You should study because you should be committed to what you're doing. That's not my job to motivate you, because I have a right to assume that if you came to college, which is not obligatory, it's because you came here to learn. You want to learn. And it's not my job to tell you that that's what you want to do. I'm assuming that's what you want to do. It's my job to excite you about my field, to tell you how wonderful it is, how great it is. Why would I bother to spend my whole life doing this? It's because I see that it has merit. And I'd like you to see that. Will it convert you? And maybe you have another field in mind. And that's perfectly fine. But I want to get the opportunity to tell you about mine too. And I think that's what professors do, unlike teachers. Okay? It's a different way of dealing with people. So I never envisioned myself as doing this, not ever. I envisioned myself in a laboratory for my whole life, okay, doing experiments. Here I have the opportunity to do both. I have the opportunity to tell people about what I really love and all the changes that are taking place and why it's exciting. And I also have the opportunity to do research with my students. So all of the biology majors have to do research before they graduate, because that's the key to their understanding of their field, is research. Whether or not they wind up doing it full-time for their whole life is immaterial. That's how they make discoveries. And so the only way that you can really find out that you can make discoveries is to do it. And so all our senior students are involved in research. When they're juniors, they have to take a course prior to that in which they learn how to read the literature and in which they decide what area they want to work in. So the short answer is I never wanted to do it. I never thought about it. And how I wound up here is because a person that I admired, who was the chair of the department at that time, called me up and said, "You want to try it out?" And I guess I was a little flattered, I don't know. And so I came and tried it out, and I never left. Here I am. I never thought about it, and I never looked back. That's how it happens. It's a mistake, a big mistake. And sometimes I say to myself, on a bad day, I say, that was the biggest mistake you ever made, was to come down here that first day. There are not that many days, though, like that. A few, here and there. So I never contemplated that. It's like, you know, there are some students who come to college and that's what their goal is, that they want to teach. And if they're going to teach in high school or junior high, they're going to concentrate in a field. If they're going to be teaching in grade school, they're going to have an area of concentration, but their major study is in education. I never took an education course in my life, not ever. And this is one of the reasons why students have a problem when they come into college from high school, that they have a bunch of mavericks teaching them, all right? Not a single one of them ever took, well, I shouldn't say not a single one, because a lot of them did take education classes, but most professors never took an education class. They're just telling you about their field. They don't know whether they should open the Venetian blinds and let the light in, or write on the board, or so it's a mess, and students have a problem trying to tune into that. Okay, so I always tell students when they come as freshmen, they're my advisees, this is going to be a very difficult semester for you. And the reason is that everybody who teaches you is going to do it differently. There is no regimentation because they didn't take any education classes. So should they? No. They should not take education classes, because I think that would ruin them. And as a matter of fact, the person who I admire very much here, who's not teaching anymore but was in education, told me that one time. Because somebody said, you should have taken an education class. And I mentioned this to this expert, and they said, it would have ruined you. So, that's it. I never wanted to be a teacher, not ever. I thought that was the worst thing I could possibly do in my whole life. I couldn't think of anything worse than teaching students. Maybe because I was not ideal when I was a student, okay? And I knew all the rotten things that students did, and I didn't want to be in that situation. But they don't really do rotten things. I think I was the rotten one, and most people are not.
So throughout your career as a professor, though, what was the most challenging thing for you?
The most challenging thing all throughout my career, and that is even today, is getting my students to understand that they really need to work, that this is not playtime. It's not just, I'm here because I don't know what else to do. That's my greatest challenge. I don't think anything else. I mean, the challenging thing, of course, is that you need to keep up with your field all the time, and that means you're devoting a lot of time to reading new material and finding out what's happening in your field, and keeping up with what's going on so that you're giving the latest information to your students, so that when they leave here, they don't have an education that's 100 years old. That is up to date. They know what's happening today. So that's a challenge also for any professor. But the biggest challenge, I think, is getting students to understand what this means for the rest of their life, and getting them to understand that they need to have a plan. And sometimes I tell students, you should really write down your plan. What is your plan for your life? Write it down on a piece of paper. And every 6 months, take it out and look at it and see if it has changed. And if it has, alter your plan. Because that's the map that you're following to get where you want to get. And if you don't know where you're going, in college you really have to think about where you're going. Now, I'm a prime example of someone who didn't think about where she was going. I was going to do research. That was my plan. And that's what I followed. I did everything that I needed to do or could do to become a good researcher. And then look where I am. So your plan can be altered, but you, on a daily basis, you need to have a plan. You need to know where you're going. You can't just be walking around in circles and saying, well, one of these days I'm going to shoot out of this circle and there I'm going to be. You need to have a plan. Can it change? Yeah, and you should be flexible enough to allow it to change. But I think most students don't have a plan. And even when I tell them make a plan, they don't make a plan. Okay? Some of them do. So that's another challenge, is to be accepting of the fact that when you talk to your students, they will hear you. But they're not going to necessarily do what you suggest for them to do. And you have to accept that, because they're individuals. And they're going to go and do their own thing. Okay? Every once in a while you might, yell at them a little bit. But in general, you have to let them do what they need to do and what they want to do. And ultimately, they will wind up doing something really good. And that's, sometimes I say that to other faculty in the department, but, because sometimes it's discouraging. I say, what are these students going to do when they graduate? I can't get them to do anything today. What are they going to do when they graduate? And they astound you when they graduate. They go off and they do wonderful things. And then you have lists, long lists of students who did wonderful things that you're very proud of. But when they were undergraduates, you never would have guessed it. And I'm sure that people said that about me too. Never would have guessed that I would have achieved anything at all in my life. It's the way it is. That's human nature. But you need to have a plan. Every student should have a plan. Every person in the world should have a plan. Be willing for it to be altered, but they should have a plan. What am I going to do tomorrow or next month or next year? I want to take a trip to Hawaii before I'm 25 years old. You write that down. Now, maybe you don't have enough money to go to Hawaii before you're 25. So then you rewrite your plan and say, I'm going to Hawaii by the time I'm 35. That's fine. You're still going to Hawaii. You're just not doing it on a schedule. A plan's not a schedule. It's just a future-oriented, what am I going to do? So that's a challenge. My challenges are associated with, can I get through to students? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If I don't, I accept that. If I do, I accept that too.
Over the years, there has been several revisions to the biology curriculum. Others studying biology during the 1960s differ from studying biology today.
Okay, I just want to say this, because the biology curriculum has not changed over the years. When I saw that, I thought, did it? It's that bad. What have we done? So the curriculum really has to do with the number of credits a student is going to take in his or her major field and related fields and whatever else. So we have not changed that since shortly after I came. What does change is the kinds of courses that you offer and the emphasis that you put in various areas. So when I was a student, the big deal was the discovery of DNA. Hadn't been discovered before that. And that changed everything in the biological sciences. The biological sciences after that became molecular. Okay? Prior to that time, it was pretty much descriptive. People took courses like comparative anatomy or embryology, and when they took embryology, they would look at developing embryos under a microscope until they fell asleep on the microscope, right? Now the course is changed so that it's called developmental biology. So you're not looking at the development of an individual organism, the movement of these cells or these tissues or from here to there during development. You're looking at the processes that result in the development ultimately, which are really molecular processes. So the courses have changed over the years, and we've dropped out of the curriculum certain courses which are no longer relevant to students, like comparative anatomy. Students who wanted to go to medical school used to always take that course, comparative anatomy. You studied the anatomy of all different kinds of organisms. And you got really stinky in the process because they were all preserved and nobody wanted to come near you while you were doing that course. We dropped that right out of the curriculum because it's no longer relevant. Now, it is in the curriculum in some colleges, but why they have it there, I don't know. We offer a course in anatomy now because we have a lot of students who come in who want to go to, want to become physical therapists or want to become physician's assistants, and those programs all require that they have physiology and anatomy. So our regular bio majors don't take anatomy, they take physiology. So they get a much more intensive study of physiology than you would get if you had a course in anatomy and physiology, which we teach to the nursing students, all right? But bio majors need to have this in a different sense. They need to know different things. So a few years ago, because we had so many students who decided they wanted to go into physical therapy or become physician's assistants, we began to offer a course in anatomy, straight anatomy. That's all they do is they dissect a cat and they study human anatomy online. It's a hybrid course. Other courses that have changed, we brought in faculty who, Dr. Delaney as a matter of fact, who is an immunologist, because it was a rising field in the biological sciences and therefore an opportunity for careers for students. So when we got a chance to hire a new faculty member, we were looking for somebody who could teach immunology, and she came and she taught immunology. Now, along with that immunology are other things that she's competent to teach. So she teaches other courses besides that. We put in anatomy and physiology because of the nursing program. So prior to the nursing program, we didn't have anatomy and physiology in the department. So you alter courses, or you add courses or subtract courses, but that doesn't change the basic curriculum in the department. Our students still have to take 36 credits in biology and at least 20 in chem, and they have to take 8 in physics and at least 8 in math, so that they'd be properly prepared for graduate school, for medical school, for careers, for whatever they want to do. They have all the tools to do that. But it's not true that the curriculum itself has altered, but courses have changed. And of course, even courses that have been taught all of those years are different now than they were all those years ago, because new discoveries come along. And now you can explain new processes that you couldn't, that you just said, this happens 50 years ago. But today, that's not sufficient to say this happens.
In a field that is ever evolving like biology, how do you recommend students keep up to date with the field?
Read, and more reading.
And how do you think your work has impacted St. Joseph's College?
I don't know. That would be for somebody else to say. I could never say that myself. I don't know what my impact is here at St. Joseph's College. I'm just here doing my job. So what a person's impact is an outsider looking in and saying, this is the impact that that person had on the college. But I don't think an individual can say that about themselves, because you don't evaluate how you influence everything around you. You're just an influencer, hopefully, but how that is evaluated would be really up to somebody else. I could never say that. I saw that and I thought, how can I answer that question? I couldn't answer that question really. And then I thought to myself, do I have to answer all these questions? Or can I leave some out?
What would you like to see accomplished at St. Joseph's within the biology department before you retire?
1,000 students who want to work, who really want to be biologists or medical doctors or dentists or whatever they want to be, doesn't make any difference. There's like 1,000 students in the biology department, all of whom are really, really scholars, really interested in studying. That's a general thrust, but not dull people. Okay, you want them to be aware of what's going on around them too, and you want them to be having fun also, but you want them to be scholars. You want them to be really learners, and I mean learners, not memorizers. Okay, there are lots of students who are memorizers, and they'll say to you, can't you just give me a piece of paper for the exam? You have a review sheet? They say to me, I say, no, I don't have any review sheets. I said, this is college, not high school anymore. I say, I'm giving you a review sheet to go home and you memorize that and come back and spit it back on the exam, because my questions are not going to be those kind of questions. The questions will require you to understand the material. So then you'll have to memorize. So that's what I want, 1,000 scholars in the biology department. Can you do that for me? We have 2 right here. And maybe you'll transfer in, you never know.
I don't think they even allow that.
Oh, sure they do. Except it might take you longer. Okay, because the curriculum is so proscribed that it's difficult to catch up if you transfer in later on. But we love to have new people coming into the department all the time. But you know what? You just said something that I said that I tell students all the time. Never say never. So I said I would never teach. And look at what happened. So I don't know if I've been any help to you. I hope so, but maybe not. I think there are other people who probably know a lot more about what you'd like to know than I do.
Thank you so much for taking the time out.
You're welcome.
to sit with us today.
Thank you for asking me to participate in this project. I did have kind of misgivings when I got the email from Lauren. I kind of sat back and said, do I want to do this?
Well, we're glad you did. To be honest, you were one of the top recommendations we got to be a narrator. After the sisters, there was you have to interview Carol. I'm so happy you agreed.
Well, I had to be honest with you. I had to be honest with you because it was shocking for me to get that.
Yeah.
And I read it and I thought, what am I going to say?
What am I going to do now?
And then I thought, I really can't say no. It's one of those situations where you say, I really can't say no. Like somebody invites you to do something and you really don't want to do it, but you really can't say no because it would be insulting to them if you did. So,
Thank you for not insulting. Very nice.
thank you for asking me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, so yes, we're going to take one big group photo or a couple, and we'll pick the best one. Because eventually we put this on the website. This is why Carol, if you don't mind signing the release form for us. It's right in front of you.
Oh, this is...
It's just saying that we can use this recording and the images attached to this activity, and we'll be putting it on our website, adding to the repository of the Voices of SJC we are collecting.
What's today?
It's 29th.
29th?
November. Yeah.
I don't remember dates anymore.
Neither, especially not in the throes of the semester.
No,
Yeah.
I know.
There's fall or spring.
And when I get off, it's even worse. Then I don't know what day it is.
So thank you again, everybody, and we'll take a picture now. If that's okay.
They were good interviewers.
Yeah. Thank you. Against the wall there, yeah. everyone somewhere. That's a little better.
Alright, yeah, maybe Professor Carroll, yeah, in the center, yeah, closer. Maybe I'll take a couple,
I hate to
okay?
have a picture taken.
Oh, me as well.
Stay still. Okay, a couple more. Stay still. This way. Alright, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. Alright, great.
She keeps saying one more, one more.
One more, 10 more.
So I guess one question I want to ask, how long have you been teaching at the college? Have you been-
53 years.
53
This is
years.
my 53rd year.
53rd
Yeah.
year. Wow. And continuously.
And you know what? Yeah, it seems like yesterday that I came.
But you started, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
How many sabbaticals do you get?
How many what?
Sabbaticals. Have you accrued at this point?
I took one sabbatical
Okay.
in 2001, spring of 2001. After the laboratories were finished,
Ah, there you go.
then I took a sabbatical.
Yes.
I
'Cause that was
think the movie you were referring, that the Sister Elizabeth took the tour with the film crew.
Yes.
Is that the Law and the?
Law and Order?
Yeah.
We've heard
The
rumors
Law
that like there was an episode of Law and Order filmed on
Yeah.
campus, and Mayumi has not been able to figure out which episode of Law and Order.
No.
Yeah.
Well, this
Antonio
would have gone back into the
Antonio
late,
Banderas.
would have gone back into the late 90s because it
Yeah.
was,
It's very possible.
I think about 1998 that Sister Elizabeth called Sister Mary Meyer and I to her office.
Mhm.
And the two of us were commiserating on the way, why are we being called to the
Yeah.
president's office?
Going into the administration's office.
And when we got in and she told us this story, I mean, it was just flabbergasting that. But she was indignant. Sister Elizabeth was indignant. Quaint.
Quaint
You
is
can't
not
call
the
the
word.
laboratories quaint. We have to do
Some
something
words are
about
dirty
that.
words, and quaint is a dirty
And it was a
word.
huge commitment that she
Yeah.
undertook
Yeah.
because they cost millions of dollars to redo.
Yeah, yeah.
And we had, we had a good architect and we had good workers so that in both cases, when they did chemistry over first and it was done over a summer.
Right.
And when they did biology, it was done over a summer too. It wasn't absolutely complete when we came back in September, but it was pretty much complete. We could go into the laboratories and work. It was not, but they had gutted everything. I mean, you could look right down into the rec room from the laboratory.
Wow. Yeah. And it's held up. It's still
Floors
repaired.
out, moved walls,
Yeah.
everything. And it was really, she allowed us to specify how it was going to be done. So we were the ones who really redesigned everything in the laboratory. So it's very different than it was before. With even the walls are not where they were.
Wow. Yeah. Quite the project.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you guys are lucky, the two biology students in the room.
right. But you know what? I remember Sister Mary and I talking about it at that time and saying, whether or not the laboratories are quaint, we've really done a lot of wonderful things here, and we've really graduated a lot of students who made us very proud in these quaint labs.
Certainly, yes.
So it's not so much what you're looking at sometimes, it's what's going on in there.
Yeah.
But we like the new labs.
Okay.
Well, they're not new anymore. Now they're 17 years old.
Right. Happens in the blink of an eye.
Time to do them over again.
Yeah, there we go.
We need-
We'll make
we
sure we
need-
record that and get that to the right.
We need another film crew to come in and call them quaint.
Right. See what we can do.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank
I
you
appreciate
again.
it.
Yeah, very much appreciate it, Carol. Okay, good. Thank you.
I'll see you around.
See you around.